The Galactic Academy stood as a beacon of knowledge in the cosmos, a place where the most advanced civilizations sent their brightest minds to study, innovate, and lead their worlds into the future. For centuries, the Academy had been an exclusive realm for the galaxy's elite species, each boasting technological advancements, physical traits, or intellectual capabilities that set them apart. Humans, though recently achieving interstellar travel, were seen as the galaxy's primitive newcomers, clever but far from exceptional. That perception was about to be tested. Alex Black stepped off the transport ship and onto the Academy's polished, shimmering grounds. The air buzzed with an unfamiliar energy, the product of technologies he couldn't begin to comprehend. Around him, students of all shapes and sizes chatted, some floating on levitation devices, others exuding an aura of light or adjusting their biomechanical appendages. Their voices mingled into a symphony of languages, each more alien than the next. Alex clutched his admission tablet tightly, its holographic map, his only guide in this overwhelming new world. The decision to admit Alex had been controversial, a topic of heated debate among the Academy's board members. Humanity's relatively recent ventures into space had impressed a few forward-thinking academics, but most viewed humans as an unnecessary risk, too emotional, too unpredictable, and too reliant on outdated methods. Miss Thorks, a celebrated instructor from the Zeon race, had been among the least critics. Known for her razor-sharp intellect and no-nonsense demeanor, she had openly questioned the inclusion of a human in her advanced physics class, deeming it an insult to her expertise. On his first day, Alex entered the Grand Lecture Hall, a cavernous space where the walls pulsed with holographic projections of galaxies, equations, and historical discoveries. The seats were arranged in tiers, ascending steeply toward the back. As he walked in, conversations halted, and hundreds of eyes turned toward him. He could feel their scrutiny, their doubt, their silent judgments. Alex forced himself to keep his head high, though every fiber of his being screamed to retreat. Miss Thorks stood at the center of the room, her tall, slender frame exuding authority. Her skin shimmered with a metallic hue, and her piercing violet eyes seemed to see through Alex entirely. She didn't speak as he approached, instead waiting until he had taken a seat near the front. When she finally addressed the class, her voice was cool and calculated, reverberating through the hall without the need for amplification. "Welcome to Advanced Quantum Dynamics," she began. "This course is not for the faint of heart. Only the most capable minds can grasp the complexities we will explore here. Mistakes will not be tolerated, as the consequences of misunderstanding these principles could mean disaster for entire civilizations." Her gaze lingered on Alex, an unspoken challenge in her expression. He felt a wave of self-consciousness but refused to let it show. The class continued, and Miss Thorks wasted no time diving into complex theories. Holographic equations materialized in the air, twisting and evolving into multidimensional representations. Alex strained to follow, his brain working overtime to process concepts far beyond anything he had encountered on Earth. As the lecture progressed, Miss Thorks's disdain for Alex became more evident. She would occasionally pause to explain something in overly simplistic terms, glancing in his direction as if to highlight her assumption that he couldn't keep up. The other students chuckled under their breath, their amusement thinly veiled. Then, halfway through the lecture, Miss Thorks decided to test her point. She halted her pacing and turned to the class with a predatory smile. "Since we are exploring the basics of galactic tensor dynamics, perhaps our newest student would care to demonstrate his understanding." The room went silent. Alex felt his stomach drop, his heart pounding in his chest. He glanced around, hoping she might be addressing someone else, but her eyes were fixed on him. Slowly, he rose from his seat, the weight of hundreds of eyes making his movements feel sluggish. "Please," Miss Thorks said, gesturing toward the holographic board at the front of the room. "Solve this equation." With a flick of her wrist, a complex formula appeared in midair, its glowing symbols shifting and intertwining. It was a challenge even for the brightest students, a problem that required not only mathematical precision, but also a deep understanding of interdimensional physics. Alex stared at the equation, his mind racing. He recognized some of the components, but the rest was alien to him, literally. He thought back to his years of studying Earth's physics, trying to find a connection, a way to approach the problem. The other students murmured among themselves, some whispering bets on how long it would take him to admit defeat. Taking a deep breath, Alex stepped closer to the holographic interface. He lifted his hand, and the system automatically adjusted to allow him to write in Earth's standard notation. The room grew quiet again as he began to work. Instead of relying on advanced tools or algorithms, he used methods he had learned on Earth, pencil and paper logic, adapted to the holographic medium. At first, his approach drew snickers. "Primitive," one student whispered. "He's just guessing," said another. But as Alex continued, the murmurs faded. The symbols on the board began to align, the equation taking shape in a way that even Miss Thorks had not anticipated. Her amused expression gave way to a frown, then to a look of genuine surprise. When Alex stepped back, the equation was complete. The room was so silent that he could hear his own breathing. Miss Thorks studied his work, her eyes narrowing as she analyzed every line, every calculation. Finally, she spoke, her voice tinged with reluctant acknowledgement. The solution is correct, she said, her tone measured. But this method, it is unorthodox. Alex met her gaze, his confidence returning. On Earth, we call it creative problem solving. A ripple of shock went through the class. For the first time, someone had challenged Miss Thorks's rigid standards and succeeded. Alex returned to his seat, his heart still racing, but now for a different reason. He had proven himself, if only for a moment. Miss Thorks continued the lecture, but her demeanor had shifted. There was no longer condescension in her tone when she addressed the class. As for Alex, he knew this was only the beginning. The road ahead would be filled with challenges, but he had taken the first step toward earning his place in the Galactic Academy. The day after Alex's unexpected success in solving Miss Thorks's challenge was one he would never forget. As he walked through the gleaming corridors of the Galactic Academy, he could feel the weight of 1,000 eyes on him. His peers, students from all corners of the galaxy, seemed unable to decide whether they were intrigued or irritated by him. Whispers followed him wherever he went, and the occasional smirk or condescending glare reminded him that his position here was still precarious. In the early morning light, the Academy's vast lecture halls and research facilities shimmered, their walls alive with moving holographic displays of faraway nebulae and complex equations. Alex felt a pang of homesickness as he caught his reflection in one of the many polished surfaces. His human features, so ordinary on Earth, seemed out of place among the alien diversity around him. Towering reptilian beings, shimmering light-based entities, and even semi-mechanical students filled the Academy's halls, each carrying an aura of intellectual superiority that seemed to diminish Alex's presence. Despite the growing tension, Alex resolved not to let doubt creep into his mind. He had proven himself once, and he knew he could do it again. Yet, as he arrived at his next lecture, an advanced seminar on multidimensional calculus, he noticed an undeniable shift in the atmosphere. Students fell silent as he entered the room, their attention fixed on him as if anticipating something extraordinary. The weight of their expectations was suffocating. Miss Thorks was already there, her imposing metallic figure commanding attention at the front of the room. She stood tall, her violet eyes scanning the room as she prepared her lecture. When her gaze settled on Alex, he noticed something new, curiosity. It wasn't approval or admiration, but it wasn't outright disdain either. If anything, it was the look of a scientist observing an anomaly. "Class," she began, her voice as sharp as ever. "Yesterday, we witnessed a unique demonstration of problem solving. While unconventional, it has raised questions about the potential value of alternative approaches. Today, we will see if such methods can hold up under more rigorous scrutiny." Her words sent a wave of murmurs through the class, but Alex remained still, his mind racing. It was clear that Miss Thorks wasn't going to let his unexpected success go unchallenged. He could almost feel the students around him sharpening their metaphorical knives, ready to see him fail. The lesson began with a detailed explanation of interdimensional wave theory, a subject that made Alex's head spin. Miss Thorks presented holographic models that twisted and expanded into impossible shapes, their dimensions folding in on themselves in ways that defied comprehension. The other students took notes effortlessly, their advanced neural implants allowing them to absorb information at lightning speed. Alex, lacking such enhancements, relied on his own determination and the simple tools he had brought from Earth, a notebook and a pen. As the lecture progressed, Miss Thorks posed increasingly difficult questions to the class. Alien students raised their hands, each offering answers that built upon the intricate principles of the topic. Alex listened intently, piecing together fragments of information as he worked to keep up. Every now and then, Miss Thorks would glance in his direction, her expression unreadable. Finally, she paused and turned to the class with a new challenge. "This," she said, gesturing toward a swirling holographic equation, "is a problem that incorporates all the principles we have discussed today. It requires not only technical precision but also a deep understanding of multidimensional interactions. Who will attempt it?" There was a brief silence before one of the top students, a crystalline entity named Kaler, raised its hand. Kaler was known for its brilliance, having aced every test and challenged. The entire room seemed to hold its breath as Kyler approached the holographic board. Core, with remarkable speed, manipulated the interface with its crystalline appendages. Equations and symbols appeared one after another in rapid succession, each building on the last in an impressive display of intellect. As Core stepped back, the room erupted in quiet applause, even Miss Thal Rex offering a subtle nod of approval. But as she studied the solution, her expression darkened. "Incorrect," she announced, her voice sharp and cutting through the silence. "While your calculations are accurate, your approach ignores the interdimensional phase shift. The solution fails under its contradictions." The room fell into a hushed silence, thick with tension. Core's crystalline surface dimmed slightly, a clear sign of embarrassment. Miss Thorx's gaze then shifted toward Alex. "Perhaps our human student would like to try," she said, her voice laced with challenge. Alex froze, unprepared to be called upon so soon, especially after Core's failure. The room seemed to tilt as he stood, his legs heavy as he made his way to the front. He stared at the holographic equation, his mind racing. The problem was unlike anything he had encountered, a labyrinth of multidimensional variables and quantum interactions. But then, something caught his attention, a pattern. The equation, complex as it was, reminded him of something he had studied back on Earth. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but there was a rhythm to it, a resemblance to the wave harmonics he had worked with in advanced acoustic physics. Drawing from that memory, he began to work. At first, his approach felt clumsy. He wrote each step out manually, using Earth's standard mathematical notation, a sharp contrast to the sleek digital symbols the other students used. Whispers and muffled laughter filled the room, but Alex remained focused. He broke the problem into smaller, more manageable parts, ignoring the distractions. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. Sweat trickled down his forehead, and his hand trembled slightly as he reached the final steps. When he finished, he stepped back, his breath shallow, and the room fell into a deep silence. Miss Thal Rex approached the board, her violet eyes scanning every detail of Alex's work. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then, to everyone's surprise, she turned to the class and declared, "The solution is correct." The room erupted into a mix of chaos. Some students whispered angrily, accusing Alex of cheating, while others demanded an explanation. Miss Thal Rex raised a hand to silence them. While unconventional, she said, "This method demonstrates a keen understanding of multidimensional interactions. It also highlights an alternative approach that, though simplistic, is remarkably effective." Alex felt a wave of relief, but it quickly dissipated as he returned to his seat and caught the glares of several students. His success had undoubtedly made him a target. The rest of the lecture blurred by as Alex's mind raced. He knew that this was just the beginning. The challenges ahead would only grow more difficult, and the resistance from his peers would intensify. But for the first time, he felt a flicker of hope. He had proven he belonged, and he was determined to continue proving it. The next day, the atmosphere at the Galactic Academy had changed. Alex's unexpected success in solving Miss Thal Rex's challenge had become the talk of every lecture hall, cafeteria, and dormitory. Conversations buzzed with a mixture of disbelief, admiration, and outright disdain. To many, Alex was an enigma, an anomaly in the galaxy's rigid intellectual hierarchy. How could a human, without neural enhancements and from an outdated educational background, accomplish what their brightest minds had failed to do? Alex, however, kept his head down. He knew the road ahead would be difficult. Though gratifying, his victory had made him a target. As he walked through the academy's winding corridors, he felt the weight of the students' eyes on him, some curious, others resentful, and a few openly hostile. He gripped his notebook tightly, its familiar texture grounding him in this alien environment. By the time Alex reached the lecture hall, the room was packed. The tension in the air was thicker than ever, buzzing with holographic projections of galaxies and mathematical formulas. The other students whispered among themselves, their voices a cacophony of alien languages, punctuated by occasional jabs in galactic common. "Let's see if he gets lucky again," a crystalline student muttered, its refractive body gleaming in the dim light. "He's just a fluke," hissed a reptilian student, its forked tongue darting in irritation. "No human can truly compete with us." Alex ignored them, his jaw clenched as he took his seat at the front. He had learned quickly that responding to provocations would only fuel their animosity. Instead, he focused on the holographic display at the front of the room, where Miss Thal Rex stood. Her metallic form gleamed under the ambient lighting, and her violet eyes seemed to pierce straight through him whenever their gazes met. Her words carried a weight that made even the most confident students tread carefully. But beneath her sharp exterior, Alex sensed something more, a flicker of curiosity, perhaps even respect. He wasn't sure if he was imagining it, but it was enough to keep him determined to prove himself. Miss Thal Rex's voice cut through the murmurs like a blade. "Today we will explore the practical application of hyperdimensional wave harmonics," she began. This topic separates true innovators from mere imitators. Those who master it will unlock the potential to manipulate spacetime itself. Those who fail, her gaze swept the room, settling on Alex, will only confirm their limitations. The challenge was clear. Alex felt the weight of her words settle heavily on him. The lecture began with an overwhelming array of concepts, each more complex than the last. Miss Thalrex moved effortlessly between equations and holographic models, her explanations precise and unwavering. The other students followed along without difficulty, their neural implants allowing them to process the information in real time. For Alex, however, it was a battle. Without the luxury of neural enhancements, he relied solely on his intellect, intuition, and relentless determination. His notebook filled quickly with notes, sketches, and calculations as he struggled to keep up. His hand ached from the effort, but he refused to stop. Halfway through the lecture, Miss Thalrex introduced a new challenge. With a flick of her wrist, she projected a massive equation into the air. Its symbols shimmered and shifted, as if alive. This, she announced, is the foundational equation for hyperdimensional wave manipulation. Your task is to solve it, but not merely for the correct answer. I expect a demonstration of creativity and insight, qualities that define a true scholar. The room fell silent as the students stared at the equation. It was monstrous in scale, its complexity enough to make even the most advanced AI systems falter. One by one, the students approached the interface, using their species methodologies to solve the problem. Some relied on advanced algorithms, others on techniques honed over centuries. Each attempt failed. Miss Thalrex's disapproval grew with every incorrect solution. You rely too heavily on invention, she scolded. True innovation requires stepping beyond the boundaries of what is known. Finally, her gaze rested on Alex. Mr. Black, she said, her tone expectant. Let us see if yesterday's success was an anomaly or a sign of deeper potential. Alex's heart raced as he rose from his seat. The whispers around him swelled, rising like a tide of doubt and anticipation. Every step he took toward the front of the room felt weighted, the expectations of his peers pressing down on him. When he reached the holographic interface, he took a deep breath, his fingers trembling as he studied the equation. It was chaotic, a web of variables, constants, and interdimensional parameters, each interwoven with the others in a seemingly impenetrable tangle. But as Alex stared at it, something clicked. Patterns began to emerge, faint echoes of principles he had studied on Earth. Hyperdimensional wave harmonics were not entirely different from the acoustic waveforms he had worked with in advanced physics courses. The key lay in the relationships between the variables and how they influenced one another. With that insight, Alex began to work. His approach seemed unorthodox as he scribbled furiously in his notebook, translating the alien symbols into Earth's standard notation. The other students scoffed, their whispers turning into outright laughter. There's no way that primitive method will work, one of them sneered, but Alex ignored them. He focused on breaking the problem into smaller, more manageable parts. Using principles of harmonic resonance, he simplified the equation, finding connections others had missed. Slowly, the solution began to take shape. When he finally stepped back, the room was silent. Miss Thalrex approached the board, her violet eyes scanning every detail of Alex's work. For a long moment, she remained still, her gaze fixed on the solution. Then, without a word, she nodded approvingly. The room remained silent, the weight of her acknowledgement hanging in the air. Miss Thalrex said nothing at first, her expression unreadable. Then, to everyone's surprise, she spoke. "The solution is correct," she declared, her voice carrying a note of reluctant admiration. "More than that, it demonstrates a level of creativity and insight that surpasses even my expectations." The room erupted in chaos. Some students stared at Alex in disbelief, others muttered angrily, but Alex barely heard them. For the first time since arriving at the academy, he felt a surge of pride. He had done it, he had proven beyond a shadow of a doubt that he belonged. Miss Thalrex turned to him, her gaze sharp but not unkind. "You have surprised me, Mr. Black," she said, "but do not let this success make you complacent. True mastery requires more than a single victory. Are you prepared for what lies ahead?" Alex met her gaze, his determination unwavering. "I am," he replied, his voice steady as he returned to his seat. The eyes of the other students were upon him once again, but this time their stares held something new, a flicker of respect, however begrudging. Alex knew the road ahead would still be filled with challenges, challenges, but he was ready. He had proven himself once more, and he wasn't about to stop now. The days following Alex's second major success were a whirlwind of conflicting emotions and mounting tensions. While some students begrudgingly acknowledged his achievements, others doubled down on their disdain, unable to reconcile the idea that a human could outperform some of the brightest minds in the galaxy. For Alex, this growing hostility was both exhausting and motivating. He had tasted the satisfaction of proving himself, but he knew each step forward would only bring greater challenges. One morning, as he walked the shimmering halls of the Galactic Academy, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. The walls, adorned with holographic projections of distant nebulae and rotating star charts, seemed almost oppressive in their grandeur. Around him, clusters of students whispered and gestured, their eyes darting toward him before quickly looking away. Alex had grown accustomed to the whispers, but today felt different, charged, almost anticipatory. When he arrived at the lecture hall, the tension was palpable. The room was unusually crowded, with students from other classes spilling into the aisles and standing near the back. Even some instructors had come to observe, their presence adding to the weight of expectation. At the front of the room, Miss Thal Rex stood taller than ever, her metallic skin catching the light in a way that made her seem both regal and intimidating. Alex took his seat near the front, clutching his notebook like a lifeline. He noticed Kaler, the crystalline student who had previously failed Miss Thal Rex's challenge, glaring at him from across the room. Kaler's refractive body pulsed faintly with irritation, and Alex suspected that the alien wasn't here to congratulate him. Miss Thal Rex began the lecture with her usual precision, diving into the intricacies of interdimensional energy transference. Her voice was calm but had an edge to it, as if preparing for something monumental. The holographic projections that accompanied her explanations were dazzling, their multidimensional shapes folding and unfolding in ways that defied comprehension. Alex took notes furiously, his mind racing to keep up. Halfway through the lecture, Miss Thal Rex paused and turned to address the class. "Today," she announced, "we will undertake a challenge unlike any you have faced before. It will test not only your understanding of the material but also your ability to innovate under pressure. Those who succeed will solidify their place among the Academy's elite. Those who fail," she let the implication hang in the air, her violet eyes scanning the room. With a flick of her wrist, she activated a massive holographic display at the front of the room. The projection expanded, filling the entire hall, revealing a sprawling network of interconnected equations, variables, and diagrams. The sheer complexity of it made Alex's stomach churn. This wasn't just a problem, it was a labyrinth. This, Miss Thal Rex continued, is the design for a hyperdimensional energy stabilizer. It is an essential component for advanced interstellar travel, but it has yet to be perfected. Your task is to identify the flaw in its current design and propose a solution. You will work individually and have 1 hour. Begin. The room erupted into murmurs, but Miss Thal Rex quickly silenced them with a sharp gesture. Alex stared at the projection, his mind racing. The stabilizer design was a chaotic tangle of equations and schematics, each layer more incomprehensible than the last. He took a deep breath and began to dissect it, focusing on one section at a time. It was like trying to untangle a ball of string while blindfolded, but he knew that panicking would only make things worse. Around him, the other students were already hard at work. Their neural implants allowed them to process the information at incredible speeds, their hands moving in a blur as they manipulated the holographic interface. Alex, lacking such enhancements, relied on his notebook and his ability to think creatively. He scribbled furiously, translating the alien symbols into Earth's standard notation, searching for patterns. As the minutes ticked by, Alex began to notice something strange. The stabilizer design relied heavily on assumptions about energy flow in higher dimensions, but there were inconsistencies in how those assumptions were applied. He circled the problematic areas in his notes, his mind working overtime to understand their implications. Suddenly, a voice broke his concentration. "You're out of your depth, human." Alex looked up to see Kaler standing over him, its crystalline body pulsing with a faint glow. The alien's tone was cold, almost mocking. "You may have gotten lucky before, but this is beyond you. Leave the real work to those who understand it." Alex clenched his jaw but said nothing. He refused to let Kaler's taunts derail him. Instead, he focused on his notes, refining his observations and piecing together a solution. Kaler lingered for a moment longer before returning to its seat, clearly unimpressed. The hour passed in what felt like an instant. When Miss Thal Rex called for time, the room fell silent. One by one, the students presented their findings, each stepping forward to explain their analysis. Some proposed minor adjustments to the stabilizer design, while others suggested more radical changes. Kaler's solution was particularly elaborate, its crystalline appendages gesturing confidently as it explained its approach. Finally, it was Alex's turn. He walked to the front of the room, his notebook clutched tightly in his hands. The whispers resumed, a low murmur of anticipation and skepticism. Alex ignored them and turned to face the holographic display. The issue with the stabilizer, he began, his voice steady despite his nerves, lies in its assumption about energy flow in higher dimensions. Specifically, the design treats the energy as a linear progression, but in reality, it operates on a cyclical pattern. He gestured to the problematic areas he had identified, using his notes to highlight the inconsistencies. By recalibrating the stabilizer to account for this cyclical behavior, we can eliminate the energy disruptions that currently plague its functionality. My proposed solution is to integrate a resonance modulator that adapts to the energy's natural rhythm. As he spoke, Alex manipulated the holographic interface to demonstrate his solution. The room was silent, the other students watching intently. When he finished, he turned to face Miss Thal Rex, his heart pounding. Miss Thal Rex studied his proposal for a long moment, her violet eyes unreadable. Finally, she nodded. "Your analysis is correct," she said, her tone measured, "and your solution demonstrates a level of creativity and insight that surpasses even some of this academy's brightest minds." The room erupted into chaos. Some students stared at Alex in disbelief, while others muttered angrily. Kaler, in particular, looked furious, its crystalline body dimming with frustration. Miss Thal Rex raised a hand, silencing the room. "Let this be a lesson to all of you," she said. "Innovation does not come from adherence to convention." As Alex returned to his seat, a surge of pride filled him. He had just faced the Academy's most daunting challenge and emerged victorious. But even as he glanced around the room, he realized that his journey was far from over. The road ahead would only become more difficult, and resistance from his peers would intensify. Yet Alex felt ready. He had proven his place, and he wasn't going to stop now. The atmosphere in the Galactic Academy felt different as Alex entered the central hall, knowing that this moment would be the most pivotal in his journey so far. His previous successes had solidified his reputation as a formidable intellect, but they had also made him more isolated. The whispers grew louder, the glares more pointed, and the resentment was impossible to ignore. It pressed on him, a weight on his shoulders, but it also fueled his determination. This challenge was no longer about simply proving himself. It was about forging a new future for humanity. The central auditorium was packed, its high tiers stretching into the shadows of the expansive dome. This was an extraordinary occasion, marked by the presence of senior faculty and distinguished interstellar guests, all gathered to witness the final test of the Advanced Quantum Dynamics course. At the center of the room, a massive holographic array displayed a constantly shifting stream of equations and schematics, glowing with an almost magical brilliance. It represented the pinnacle of technological and intellectual achievement, and Alex couldn't look away. Miss Thor stood by the hologram, her metallic form reflecting its glow. She seemed composed, but Alex could sense the subtle tension in her stance and the slight narrowing of her violet eyes, as if she too felt the weight of what was about to happen. He suspected that she had orchestrated this event not just to test him, but to test the entire academy. "This is the final challenge," Miss Thor announced, her voice ringing through the hall. "It is not just an academic test, but one of innovation, adaptability, and the courage to push the boundaries of known science." She gestured toward the holographic display, which shifted to reveal a simulation of a failing hyperdimensional gateway, a critical element of interstellar travel. The collapse of this gateway would cause dimensional rifts, endangering entire star systems. "Your task," Miss Thor continued, "is to stabilize this gateway using the principles we have studied. You will work alone and you have 2 hours. Success is not guaranteed, and failure," she let the tension in her words settle. "Failure will speak for itself." Murmurs rippled through the crowd as students exchanged anxious glances. Alex took a deep breath and moved toward his station, taking his place among the others. Each student was connected to the central simulation, their holographic interfaces allowing them to manipulate the gateway's parameters in real time. As the countdown began, Alex focused on the simulation, his mind immediately attuned to the gateway's instability. Its dimensional anchors were fluctuating wildly. While the other students rushed to input adjustments, their neural implants allowing them to process the data faster than humanly possible, Alex took a step back. Rather than reacting impulsively to the chaos, he observed the simulation as a whole. He quickly realized that the problem wasn't simply about fixing individual variables. The gateway's design itself was flawed, incapable of managing the complexity of interdimensional energy flows. To stabilize it, Alex would have to rebuild its framework entirely, a task that would demand both precision and creativity. The room was silent, save for the hum of holographic interfaces and the occasional nervous whisper. Alex's fingers moved swiftly over his console, adjusting the parameters, creating a solution based on harmonic resonance, an algorithm that would adapt dynamically to the energy flows instead of trying to force them into a rigid system. It was a bold approach, one that defied conventional thinking, but Alex trusted his instincts. As the first hour passed, the tension mounted. Several students had already abandoned their attempts, their stabilization methods failing. Kaler, a crystalline student who had been Alex's harshest critic, was still working furiously, his refractive body glowing with determination. Alex felt Kaler's animosity, even from across the room, but refused to let it distract him. With only 30 minutes left, Alex encountered a critical setback. His algorithm, while effective, couldn't cope with the gateway's increasing energy surges. He needed something else, a secondary stabilizer, a buffer that could absorb the excess energy while his main system recalibrated. He searched his mind for a solution and remembered an old principle from Earth: harmonic dampers used in architecture to stabilize buildings during earthquakes. Drawing from this concept, Alex quickly integrated a harmonic dampening field into his algorithm. As the gateway's fluctuations began to subside, the energy flows aligned in a smooth, steady pattern. His heart raced as he watched the results unfold in real time. His solution was working. In the final moments of the countdown, the room erupted into chaos. Students and instructors alike stared at the simulation, which now displayed a fully stabilized gateway. Miss Thor approached, her expression unreadable. She examined the results before addressing the room. "The gateway has been stabilized," she said, "and the solution that made this possible was developed by Mr. Black." A brief, stunned silence followed before the room burst into applause, some students showing newfound respect, others turning away in resentment. Kaler, in particular, appeared frozen, his crystalline surface dimming as he processed the ramifications of Alex's success. Miss Thor raised her hand, quieting the room. "Let this moment serve as a lesson to all of us. Innovation is not limited by race, technology, or tradition. It is born from the courage to challenge assumptions and embrace the unknown." She turned to Alex, her gaze softening. "Mr. Black, you have proven that humanity has a place among the galaxy's brightest minds. But remember, this is just the beginning. True greatness lies in inspiring others to share your knowledge and build a future beyond individual achievement." Alex nodded, feeling a mix of pride and humility. He had come to the academy as an outsider, a curiosity, and a target. But now, he stood as a symbol of humanity's potential. As he left the auditorium, the whispers followed him again. But this time, they were different. They were full of curiosity, respect, and perhaps even hope. For Alex, the journey was far from over. He knew there would be more challenges, more obstacles, and more opportunities to prove himself. But as he walked through the academy's gleaming halls, he felt a sense of purpose he had never experienced before. He wasn't just representing himself, he was representing humanity, and he was determined to carve out a place for his people among the stars.